Hi everybody, Steven here. This is a follow-on video to my Layer 2 VPN video I just recently released. I had a few questions in regards with how does the communication path work from my web servers out to my VPN. So with that said, I figured I'd put together this video. So stick around and let's cue the introduction. All right, thanks for sticking around. I got a bit of a sore throat and I got a class I got to teach next week. So I want to thank my friends for the Easter weekend for giving me the sore throat. I really appreciate that. Anyways, this is just a follow-on video to the Layer 2 VPN. I'm going to do a little bit of deeper dive into what's going on with the communication paths because I know at the end of my video there, the last time, I moved the web segment from the VPN tier 1 to just a regular, and that really kind of threw a wrench into the works. A lot of people were like, how's this working, right? That's what we're going to talk about. So anyways, enough of that. Always like to throw this out there. Please consider supporting the channel, right? And it's so simple. Just hit that subscribe button. And that's it. We'll keep that one quick. So we'll jump right into it right now. So let's take a look. All right, so let's do a quick little review on what we did before in the previous video. I created a Layer 2 VPN, and I did it between two sites. I have my site, we'll say site B was on the left, and there's the Autonomous Edge, and then site A over here on the right, that has my NSX environment. And I showed you all setting all that up in the previous video, so you'll need to watch that. I'm not going to go through it again. My endpoints of my VPNs on site B, again, it's the local endpoint is 10.1.2.1. The local endpoint on the site A is 172.16.80.4. So again, these are what my VPNs are going to connect. And again, my tunnel is getting created across, technically across here, like this, okay? Now, for the most part, when you're looking at this, it looks pretty straightforward. I did this in my demo. I created a tier 1 gateway for the VPN. I made this active standby, so I associated it with an edge cluster. In my lab environment was edge cluster 2 that has two edge nodes, edge 3 and edge 4. It's active standby. Edge 3 is the active, edge 4 is the standby. And I kind of showed you that when I set it up. My tier 0 gateway is set up as active, and it's on a separate cluster, edge cluster. So that doesn't really matter for this discussion, okay? And I put a web segment back here on the 172.16.10 network. And again, web 1 is .11, web 2 is .12. On site B, again, I stretched that web segment, 172.16.10, to .13 and .14, okay? So this web segment is stretched across. So now, before I jump forward, one of the things you got to remember, our gateways have these components. You have an SR component and a DR component. So for example, my tier 0 gate will have this service router component and a distributed router. The distributed router component is basically located in the kernel of all your transport nodes, your ESXi host, your edge servers, that sort of thing. The SR component is for stateful services, and it's actually, I shouldn't say for stateful service, centralized services, and it's located on edge nodes. So this lives on edge nodes. Now, your tier 1 gateway has a very similar setup. You generally have a DR component, a distributed router component that's, again, located on your transport nodes, and you may have an SR component. As soon as you say, I want to put a service on this tier 1, it says I need this SR component, and where does that live? That lives on an edge. Now, since I put a VPN on my tier 1 gateway, it says I need to instantiate an SR component. Okay, great. So let's go back to this. So in my picture here, if I zoom in just a little bit more, if I look at my tier 1 gateway, my VPN, I said, oh, there's a service, so there's an SR component. So let's put that. There's the SR component. There's a DR component there as well. And there's the link between them. It's automatically created. So you're going to assume, let me zoom out. You're going to assume, oh, okay, for these guys to talk, it's going to basically go something like this. Through the DR, hit the SR, do the encapsulation, or the encryption, I should say, and then get decrypted at the other end, and then whatever, sent to wherever it's got to go. And that kind of makes sense. But what happens when I do this? And this is what I demoed at the end of my video, and I had questions on it. What happens if I do something like this now? Come on. Oops. No, it's not letting me change the slide. Party pooper. There we go. What happens when I do this? I just have the tier 1 VPN, but my segment here is on a different gateway, which you can do, and I demoed that. So when I create my VPN over here, any NSX segment can take advantage of that. Doesn't have to be sitting behind the tier 1 gateway. All right. So let's take a look at this. So what path does it take now? Does it go through the DR component over here? Again, I probably should have changed my colors. Does it use the DR component? What's going on? So let's take a couple quick looks. All right. So let me jump into my system here. So right now, if I just go into networking, if I go into VPNs, there's my, let's look at the layer 2 VPN session. You can see, sorry, let's go back to the services. My layer 2 VPN server is using this gateway, tier 1 GW VPN. If I look at that gateway, tier 1, you see tier 1 gateway VPN, it's active standby, and it's got a segment connected to it, my web segment, okay? So everything's sitting behind that. If I go to now if I go back to here, let's go to vSphere. So I've got Web 1 and Web 2 running on my NSX environment, okay? Then I have these Web 3 and 4 running on Site B, so no NSX at Site B, okay? If I open this up again, if you look at Web 1, if I go into the console of it, which I already have open, you'll see Web 1 is now pinging Web 13 successfully, and that's at the other site, so it's going through the tunnel. What path is it taking, okay? So let's go over here now, and let me just do something here. Let's go into NSX. So I see my segments there. Let's move it. Let's go into segments. Let's edit the segment. Actually, before I do that, let's do something here. Let's go into that edge node. It's edge 3 that's my active. That's the way I set it up. Edge node 3. So let's log in. Oh, I should probably change my color here. It's not the greatest color. Bear with me. Background. Let's put a darker one. Yeah. Well, that didn't do anything. I picked the wrong one. Let's try that again. Colors. Default background modify. Let's put black there. Okay. So hopefully that's a little better. So I'm on that edge node. I'm going to type in get gateways. Get gateway. And you'll see I have a VRF, gateway 0. I have a VRF 4. I have a VRF 5. There's an SR component for that tier 1 VPN. Okay, that's great. I expected that. You'll see there's a DR component for a tier 1 gateway. There's also some other DR components for my tier 1 gateway, my regular tier 1, and I got a DR component from my regular tier 0, which is fine. DRs exist everywhere, right? So I see those because I do have another gateway here, right? It's not really part of this demo, but it doesn't really matter. So it's sitting there, okay? So I just showed you I have a DR component on my tier 1, and I got my SR component, okay? Watch what happens when I do this. Let's go into segments. Let's go into edit settings. And I'm not going to connect it to that VPN anymore. I'm going to connect it to my regular tier 1 gateway. And I'm going to say save. I'm going to go close. Let's go back to my tier 1 gateways. There's my VPN. Notice no more segments. Is it still pinging? Better be. It's still working. All right? So it goes back to basically this picture that I've got here. I put my web segment on a different gateway, and I'm just using that as my VPN. So what's the communication? Let's go back into my screen here. Let's go into here now. And this is interesting. I'm going to go get gateways again. I'm on edge node 3, all right? Okay, see I have my VRFs here, okay? I'm going to go get gateways. Notice there's one less. So there's the SR component for my tier 1 gateway VPN. I see 2 DR components for the other gateways. What happened to the DR component for the gateway for the VPN? Because there's no segments attached to it, it doesn't need that distributed router. So how does the communication work? You're going to assume it's going through the DR. Now, you got to think about this for a second. The DR component gets used as it's a distributed router. So that's the default gateway for your segments. So I got web. Let's go back to my picture here. Let's go back to iPad only. whatever, iPad and webcam. I've got web 1, sorry, web 1's over here on the, so I got web 1 over here, dot 11, pinging web 13, dot 13. They're on the same subnet. So this, the operating system inside web 1 is not going to say, oh, send it to my default gateway, which would be the distributed router, okay? So the distributed router does not get used in any of this because we're stretching our layer to network. That's what we're doing. So what we need to do is see what's going on underneath the covers here. And what's happening is it needs to exit the host. Web 1's running on an ESXi host. I think it's ESXi 01, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And this guy's running on whatever, ESXi 07 at a different site. Okay, it doesn't really matter. So I need to look at the host where this guy is running on and figure out what's going on. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Let's go back to my desktop here. Let's just go in and look at web 1. Okay, so web 1 is running on where we are. Where are we? Here we go. It's running on host 1. Okay, so let's go into host 1, and I'm just going to scroll over here. Here's host 1. Let me throw on these glasses. I do a lot of command line stuff today. The eyes are a bit bugged out. So let's log in. Oops. Let's look at host 1. Now, just a couple different ways to look at this. Let's go into NSX. Let's go into my system. Let's go into fabric hosts. And then you'll see my compute cluster here. Here's host 1, and here's its TAP address, 172.20.11.152. Let's keep that in the back of our mind. If I go back to host 1 over here, I could do something like this, ESX top, right? Just one example, okay? I'm going to hit N for network. And then from there, you'll see I got a VM kernel 10. There's my TEP. Notice it's bound to this NIC here. I only got a single TEP in my host. I got a sore throat, guys, sorry. I got a single TEP in my host, right? So it's using VMNIC2. Let's keep that in the back of my mind. You'll see over here, here's my web VM. It's using this TEP. There's only a single TEP. So it's going out VMNIC2. Let's look at the port that web 2's on. Sorry, web 1, okay? Let's look at that port, what traffic's coming out. I just copied that port. Let's do it again. I just copied it. Let me quit that. Let's go into NSX CLI. And then let's do a start, capture, interface. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to hit enter. And this should show us what's coming out of that interface here. I'm just going to stop this. And you see, it looks like I got my layer 3 stuff right here. It's 172.16.10.11. That's a source. That's web 1. Pinging 172.16.10.13. That's web 3 at the site B. It's an ICMP echo request. Notice over here, you see the MAC address. This is the source MAC, 8286. What's that? That should be web 1. Let's just confirm. Let's go into web 1 here. Let's scroll down. Let's hit edit. Let's look at the network adapters. There's other ways to do this. There we go, 8286. There's the MAC address of web 1, right? Let's go back into here. Yeah, 8286 is the source. It's going to 2B48. 2B48. Let's go to here. Let's go to our site B. Let's look at web 3. Let's edit. Let's look at our network. 2B48. Okay? That's right. There we go. 2B48. If the destination here was the distributed router, it would say something like 0250564452. I would see something like that, but it's not. So it's showing me right here, it's not using the distributed router component. Okay, so where's it going? All right, well, the only thing is, let's check the TAP. Remember the TAP was a VMNIC2. Let's confirm. Except let's type in ESX top. Again, there's other ways to do this. This is the easiest. I'll hit N for network. And then again, here's my VM kernel 10, and it's using VMNIC2. All right, let's quit this. Let's go back into NSX CLI. Let's go start, capture, interface, VMNIC2. It's going to spew back a bunch of garbage. It's not garbage, but spewing back a lot of stuff. Let's filter this down a little bit to make it a little bit easier for us. VMNIC2, let's say direction. I want to see what's going out, output, and I'm going to go expression, IP. I only want to filter what's coming out of the VM kernel port for VMNIC2, which is 172.20.11.152. Remember that address I showed you in NSX? That's the TEP of this host. There we go. It's got stuff going by. I'm waiting to see something particular. Oh, there we go. I see it right there. Okay. So I just stopped that. So right off the bat, you're seeing some Geneve stuff going on here. Source, 172.20.11.152. Destination is another TEP. Here's 153 is the destination. 159 is the destination. And these are all, again, notice the VNI, Virtual Network Identifier, is 00. This is a Geneve header I'm looking at. If I actually look at a little closer, you'll see it's BFD version 1. These are basically bidirectional forward detection frames that are being sent out. Think of it as heartbeats between the TEPs, making sure TEPs are alive. So I don't care about that. What I care about this one, VNI 11800. VNI 11800 is the segment ID, is the VNI of my web segment. How do I know that? Well, let me just type in something here. I'm in, let me type in get segments, and you'll see this host 71680 is the VNI ID of my web segment. Remember, we're pinging web to web, right? So it's going from an overlay network to a regular VLAN. So the overlay is VNI 71680. Now, in our capture there, if I scroll back up to our capture, you'll see it's showing me VNI. Where are you again? VNI 1180. Again, if you convert hex 1180 to decimal, it'll come out to 71680. Okay, so that's it in hex. More importantly, what do I see here? I see the TEP. This is the TEP of host 1 going to this TEP, 172.20.11.158. Who's that? We'll see that in a second. But I see the encapsulated stuff right here. This is the source MAC 8286 going to destination MAC 2B48. That was web 1 going to web 3. Then I see the IP 172.16.10.11 going to 172.16.10.13. So I've taken that frame and encapsulate inside Geneve, and we're sending it over to this TEP, who is 172.20.11.158. You may be able to guess at it, but let's go back into NSX, and let's take a look here. Let's go into nodes. And remember, my VPN is using Edge Cluster 2, which I told you had Edge 3 and 4, and I said Edge 3 is the active, Edge 4 is the standby. That's how I set it up. If you're not sure how I did that stuff, you got to watch my routing videos. Notice over here the TAP, 172.20.11.158. So it knows to send it there. How does it know that? Which I thought, okay, maybe there's an entry inside the NSX VTAP tables and MAC tables. Well, let's go and check that out. Let's go into my NSX manager. I'm going to log in as NSX manager. I got videos showing all this stuff on examining these tables. So I'm on my NSX manager. There's other ways to do this. I like doing it this way. I'm going to type in get logical get logical Did I log in properly? Type in get logical. Did I make a typo here? Logical, what do I want here? Logical switches. And I hit enter. Again, I'm looking at web segment 71680. It's right there. So let's look at the tables in that. So let's get logical switch 71680. 71680 VTAP. I should make this bigger so you can see it a bit easier. Let me reduce the font size a bit. Okay, and appearance change. This way we see everything not scrolling over. Let's apply. So there we go. So I have 4 entries inside there. Look at that. There's an entry for host 1, 152, right? That's the tap on host 1. Because I got a VM1, a web 1 running on that. There's another entry here for 11.151. That's actually host Let's just confirm it. That's where Web 2 is running, which is going to be host 3 in this example, or host 3 in this example. Okay. Again, if non-believers out there, let's go to host 3. Yep. There's the tab 151 right there. Okay. So I've got a VM running on that host on web segment. That's why I see the entry. What are these other two taps? What the heck is going on there? That, the 158, if you notice, was edge 3. Sorry, not 4, 3. 159 is edge 4. Let's go back into NSX, confirm all that. Let's go back to edge. Edge 4 there is 159. You see that over there? It's tap. So remember, it's running active standby. Okay? So, all right, that kind of makes sense. I see, because my my bridge is running, you got to think of it, it's a bridge, a layer 2 bridge, because it's running on those two edges. We have to be aware of those taps to send stuff out there, like ARP requests. All right, let's look at the MAC table. Maybe I'll see an entry for Web 3 in there. Let's go MAC. I'm probably going to see 2 empties. There we go. I see only 2 entries here. Okay, now you can take my word for this. I can show it to you. This is the MAC address of Web 1. This is the MAC address of Web 2 on the overlay networks. Let me show you. Let's look at the ARP table. Should be entries in there. Oh, only Web 1's in there. Let's just ping Web 2 and get a ping 172.16.10.12. There we go. It got flushed out. Boom. There's 2 entries in there. There's Web 2 and Web 1. Why isn't there an entry for Web 3 and Web 4, which is on Site B, which you figure you'd see in there? Oh, if you want to talk to Site B, Web 3 and 4, you need to send it over to our bridge. So how does it know to send it to the bridge? So let's go into our host. That's where the trick here is. So let me go to my ESXi host. Let's go to host 1 here. Okay, so let's kill this here. There we go. Let's type in the command here. We want to look at the tables. So let's type in get segment 71680 vtap-table, and we see the vtap tables here. Okay, so we see this is host 1. Okay, this is host 1. That's what the host is that I'm on. But you see the entries for the edge node. That's edge 3 and edge 4. Again, we see it over here on our local control plane, right? Edge 3 and edge 4. We see the subnets. You see the taps IP and stuff like that. And you see this is the local control plane table as well. So we see some tap information. This is a way for you to kind of make sure your local control plane sync with the master control plane or central control plane. More importantly, let's do what I want to show here is the MAC table. And when we look at the MAC table, what do we see here? I'm looking for this entry right here. That's the MAC address of Web 3. Okay, 9B2B48. It's the MAC address of Web B. And it's telling me if you want to talk to Web B, so this host has an entry in its MAC table says if you want to talk to Web B, you've got to go to this tap, right? So you have to encapsulate and send it to that edge tap, and here's the MAC address of that tap on the edge. So this is telling me to do that. Okay, now how did it figure that out? Let's where's actually Web 4? Web 4 is not in there. Let's try this out. Let's go into here and let's go to Web 1. Web 1 is here. Let's ping 14, Web 4. Okay, so I just pinged Web 4. Let's go back to here. Let's look at this entry. Should be another one in there. Boom. All of a sudden it came up with, there's actually 2 it looks like it came up with. 158. This is actually, where is Web 4? Is it 40B2? Is it 40B2? Right there at the top. There is Web 4. Something else might have come up. I'd have to look it up. But anyways, so it does have the entry, so it knows to get there. Now, remember, when I typed in that ping of Web 4, it didn't have an entry there, so it did an ARP. So it had to flood that ARP out. Where's it flooded out to? Remember the entries of the tap tables, right? So the host looks inside its tap table and says, oh, these taps here, 158, 159, and itself, are participating on this segment. That's actually not itself. That's host 2 there, sorry, or host 3. So it looks at these taps and says, oh, you know what? I have to flood that ARP request out to all those taps. They have to decapsulate and send it up to their VMs. So the bridge here, again, this is a bridge, and it knows, oh, okay, I got to send that across the VPN, right? So why don't we take a look at the edge interfaces now, okay? So hopefully I'm not beating around the bush too much here. What we're seeing here, it doesn't use the distributed logical router, which makes sense. It's layer 2 connectivity. So it says, oh, that web 3 is not on this host because we're an overlay. I got to send it out somewhere else. So it says I got to send it out to my tap, and the tap's got to fire it out to some place. In this case, it's the bridge. So it knows, okay, send it to this tap. And then the VPN, the layer 2 VPN or bridge, will actually know to send that out. So why don't we take a look at that? And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, why don't you consider supporting the channel by hitting that subscribe button? It's totally free. Just click on that. And, hit that thumbs up or like button. That helps, again, with YouTube analytics. So let's take a look at the edge. All right, so let's take a look at the edge. Now, before I do that, let me change this back because I was pinging 14. Let me ping 13 now. So we'll go back to the original stuff we've been doing. And let's go into my edge node 3. By the way, just for completeness here, if I go into my networking, if I go into my tier 1 gateways, my VPN gateway here, auto allocate to edges is no. You'll see edge 3 is my is set here, right? Let's just go into the edit. I like the edit screen a little bit better. So you'll see I've set preemptive, so my preferred node is edge 3. So that's why I know it's running, okay? Anyhow, so let's get out of that. Let's close editing. Let's go into edge 3. Where are you, edge 3? All right, so I'll log in as admin. VMware. Okay, I'm not sure how well this comes across. This should be okay on the screen. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to move that to the top. I'm going to connect again to edge 3 because I want to do a couple things here. Let's go to, where are you? Edge 3. Admin. Okay, and I'm going to change the color of this interface. Change settings, colors, default background modify. We'll go with a whatever that is. There we go. Okay, so I just have let's open that up a bit more. Let's open that up a bit more. So I'm on edge 3. I'm just going to type in the command get gateways. I can type in get logical routers. It'll produce the same thing. You'll see over here, and I've shown you this already. You'll see my VRF4. That's the default one. That's my tunnel. Let's check it out. VRF4. I'm going to type in get interfaces. And I hit enter. If I scroll up, you'll see, oops, let's make this maybe a little bit bigger. You'll see there's an interface here. It says CPU. I'm not sure what that's used for. You'll see there's an uplink interface, 172.20.11.158. So that is my tunnel. There's my VTEP. Hey, why don't we start capturing information on that? Let me copy this interface. There's the interface. I just copied the interface. Let me go to that other screen now, and let's type in get. No. Let's type in get capture interface. Oops. Am I in the right thing here? Oh, what am I doing? Get, sorry. Start capture interface. Let's paste that in. That's the tap. There should be a whole bunch of information coming in on that. Let's see what happens. Yeah, there's a crap load of stuff coming in here. Let's run that, get interface, and let's put down direction, input, and expression, IP. I just want to get the stuff from host 1, which is 172.20.11.152. That's the tap address on host 1. I don't want to be flooding it with everything else. I just want to look at that. So let's maybe move this up a little bit. And what do we see here? Okay, so I see VNI 00. What I'm looking for right here is VNI 11800. That's my web segment. So you'll actually see it's coming from, that's host 1. That's its tap on host 1. There's the tap on the edge node. So that's the Geneve header. This is the whole Geneve header right here. Source MAC and destination MAC, source IP, destination IP, again, the VNI ID, all that wonderful stuff. Then we see here, there's the MAC address of web 1, 8286, right? 8286. Here's the MAC address of web 3, 2B48. Just like when we went to the beginning and I captured what was leaving web 1, this is what was leaving web 1, the source destination MAC. That's the layer 2 stuff. Then you see over here the source and destination IP. All right? So we see that got encapsulated on our edge node. All right? All right. So that's kind of interesting to see there. Let's get out of this virtual VRF. Let's type in get gateways again. And we see down over here, I've got the SR component for the VPN. That's what I care about because that's doing the tunnel for me, right? Let's look at that. That's VRF5. Let's type in, let's go back to here. Actually, no, VRF5. And let's do get interfaces. So now, and if I scroll up a bit more, we're in VRF5. I see there's a VTI interface, the virtual tunnel interface. I see there's a generic router encapsulation. That's tunnel Ethernet, I believe that is. Tunnel over Ethernet, that GRE tap. There's an interface there. There's this really interesting wording here. I guess it's just a luck of the draw. Dead, whatever. There's the number there. That's this other interface. This is the uplink from my tier 0 gateway. Tier 0 gateway to the tier 1 VPN. So this is going from my tier 1 VPN going up to my tier 0. This really should be the interface where that VPN is, the IPsec. I'm going to copy that. Let's go into my other window and let's start capturing on that interface. Let's get rid of all this stuff because this is obviously after encapsulation. I'm going to paste that in. And what do I see here? Here we go. Let's stop for a second. What do I see? I see some source MACs and some destination MACs. These are distributed logical router MACs, source MAC. That would be the uplink of my SR component going to the distributed router of the tier 0 gateway. That's what I see here. But what's more important here, you see the source address 172.16.80.4 to 10.1.2.1. Why? What's so important there? Seems like a long time ago. Let's go back to the iPad. That is, again, that is my VPN endpoints. So let's go back to my screen here. So you see that. Then you see ESP, encapsulated security payload. Then the SPI, the security parameter index. This is my IPsec encapsulated payload that's leaving. Okay? So that's what I had mentioned before, that this interface here, let's go back to here, this interface here, the one is leaving the VPN, which is interesting. Let's take a look at this interface. Let's look at the GRE tab. Let's select that. And we should see our traffic before it gets encapsulated inside IPsec. Because remember, we're using GRE, generic router encapsulation, to create a tunnel for like multicast traffic, and then we're encapsulating that with IPsec. So let's take a look at that interface and see what we see. So we really should see our payload there. Let's see what happens. Well, I don't really see my payload. Actually, I do see my payload. I do see my pings here. 172.20.10.11, web 1, going to web 3. There's the echo request. Then you see our reply from 13 back to 11, and there's the echo reply. What's interesting here is, I want to point out, VLAN 100. VLAN 100. Where to get that from? If you remember my other video, but you probably don't because I'm just going to show it to you right now, is let's go to my segments. One of the things when you set up your segments to stretch, when you go to layer 2 VPN, you got to give it a tunnel ID. And that's my tunnel ID. So VMware's kind of gone to the layer 2 frame and said, we're going to use that 12-bit identifier for VLANs, but we're going to use it for our tunnel ID. So that's why I said this is kind of a proprietary protocol, not proprietary protocol, but the layer 2 VPN stuff, the client server, has to be VMware both ends because they kind of modified things a bit. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. So again, we have those interfaces. Let's look at one more and that'll be it. I think that's good enough. That was this one. Let's look at the virtual tunnel interface. Let's look at that interface. Probably should be the same stuff. Let's see what we see here. Is that what I want? Yeah, that's what I want. Let's get rid of that one. Let's paste that in. And what do we see here? Pretty much the same thing. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Okay? So that's basically it. What did we learn? Again, because it's layer 2, when a VM wants to talk to another one, we don't go through our distributed routers and stuff like you would assume when you look at this picture here, especially in this one. Oh, it's going to go through the distributed router, then out this way. It doesn't. It's layer 2 connectivity, so it doesn't use the distributed router. Gets encapsulated, gets sent over to the edge node that's running the VPN service, okay? And then gets decapsulated there, then gets encapsulated inside Geneve, and then encrypted with IPsec, then fired across the tunnel. Anyways, I hope you found that beneficial. All right, folks. I had a few questions on it, and I wanted to kind of cover it because I thought it was kind of interesting. I still had the lab set up, so I didn't want to tear it down and redo it. So, but anyhow, I hope you found this informative. And I still got a sore throat. I got to teach in another week. But anyways, hope you found it informative. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit a thumbs up there. Please support the channel again by subscribing. Leave comments and questions down below. Please don't send questions to LinkedIn or my personal email. I'll just redirect it back. Say, hey, leave it in the comments. Because when you put it in the comments, it helps out with the YouTube analytics showing the interaction between you folks and me. So that helps out. If there's something you want to see me cover or do, please leave it down below. I'll see what I can do about getting to it. I got a big, long list of stuff, and I keep on trying to do as much as I can. All right? So thanks again, and you have a great day. Bye now.